Hey friends. I had another lesson with Madeline today, so guess what I'm spontaneously feeling inspired to talk about? But man, so there's this experience. This is an experience that is little by little becoming routine, although it remains intense enough that it isn't quite routine yet. It doesn't, I don't absorb it as routine yet. I still have to kind of like breathe through it each time, which is I practice in preparation for my lessons. As I practice, my focus naturally, because I am the person that I am, my focus starts to go in whatever directions are kind of habitual for me. I have a certain way that I think about practicing, or not even think about practicing, but when I practice, there's an approach. I take an approach that's been formed by the years of study that I've done, all the different teachers, all the different influences, and myself showing up each day, and the work that I do, and what has proved successful for me in the past. So anyway, I practice, I get ready for my lesson, and I get on the lesson, and in the first, I start playing, and she stops me after 4 bars, and immediately starts directing my focus in a completely different way than my focus was directed for the last 2 weeks or whatever. Not 2 weeks. Usually I absorb a little more from the previous lesson and carry that through a little bit. But it's an experience of really then having to sit back and kind of breathe, because it's like a whole complex of impulses that she just frustrated, right? I'm thinking I want to learn something about page 3, and I haven't even gotten out of the first 2 bars of the song yet. So that's what I mean by it's not routine. That experience has happened to me a couple of times now. And so it's familiar, but I wouldn't call it routine. And furthermore, I'm not sure that I would want it to be routine, because ideally I would begin to integrate this new way of focusing and begin to absorb more of this is what my focus should be doing here. But anyway, so I sat with that. I got on the lesson, immediately got stopped, and started doing really deep work on just minutia of what the top note was doing for these 2 bars or these 4 bars, where my wrist is positioned. She stopped me about 9 times after the first note because my wrist kept going up, and she didn't want my wrist to go up on the first note. She wanted it to go up on the second note, but I was just kind of in the habit of raising my wrist on the first note, so she just stopped me over and over again. And you can imagine, you're playing a Chopin Étude and you keep getting stopped after the first note. Your impulses are trying to go somewhere, and it's no, wait, settle, just let this tiny, tiny, tiny thing be your focus until you get that. And it's funny because this is something that I've even said to my own students recently. I've talking to one of my kind of primary students just the other day, saying, I wish you could, but I invite you to be satisfied with smaller units of success, because how small of a unit of success we can allow ourselves to appreciate. The smaller the thing that we can allow ourselves to appreciate, the deeper we're actually going. And then we can string those things together but retain the depth. if we consistently need more in order to be satisfied, it can compromise our ability to go deep enough for it to really sink in, and for real confidence, real competence to develop. So it's just, of course, what I'm saying to my students is also what I myself am receiving and need to receive. But be that as it may, it was a intense start to the lesson, but then almost immediately, it's like she had me do this exercise, and almost with it, I don't know, within 5-7 minutes, I played the phrase again, and I just hear the melody singing, and there's distinction between the melody and the accompaniment, and I was like, oh, whoa, oh, that's what she means, like, just like total, it's so funny to me. Maybe it's only funny because I know what's happening in my own mind. Like, I know how much I know how much it takes for me to sort of breathe through my impulse to push ahead. And then, but if I will do that, then my experience so swiftly is, oh, wow, yeah, she's right. That reframes everything. Like, that completely changes what I was doing. There's no, and I was never going to get there going the other, like, my focus wasn't even on that. My focus was somewhere else. So that's a beautiful experience to have had, and just the willingness to sit through that moment of, thinking what my impulses are, of just having that level of drive, and then breathing into another dimension, just trusting. I have to trust. If I didn't trust her, there's no way I'd be able to have the self-control, the self-discipline. I would if I didn't trust her, then what I'm experiencing internally would be so powerful that I would find it overwhelmingly compelling, and I would think I have to do what I'm feeling. Which takes me to the second big lesson of my lesson today. We were working on we did finally get to the second half of the piece, and the kind of heavy technical stuff that was so much of my focus when I was practicing. And of course, what I know I can expect when I have technical challenges on the piano is, I know that if I take them to Madeline, I can expect a clear, physical, technical explanation of how to make it possible to play something that's incredibly difficult. That's what I know. That happens every time. And that happened again. So I picked up this passage, and it was like, it's so tricky. And and she gave me just exactly the right, the exactly right technical approach. And then she was encouraging me, okay, play like a robot, like literally don't pretend you're not even playing music. Just repeat this technical, execute this technical thing as though you're a robot over and over again, and make sure that it was back to the kind of famous, not every note is of equal value. Certain notes, or not every note is of equal emphasis. So make sure there's emphasis on one note and not on the other note, because if every note is emphasized, it'll become impossible to play. So she gave me this great kind of technical way in. But then she said something about, and it was funny because I was starting to intuit this. It was almost like it was coming up in my intuition, and then she like said it out loud, because she said something about how when we have really difficult passages like that, you almost want to play, we want our focus to be on just strictly technique. Now, that technique doesn't mean we're not hearing the music. It doesn't mean we're not using our whole organism. It doesn't mean strictly technically, doesn't mean just use our hands. There may be phases of practice where we just focus on that physical thing, but that's not what she means by play strictly technically. It just means let the entire focus of what we're doing be on the execution of the passage. And then she said, because it frees us when we do that, it frees us from that gummy feeling of our kind of emotional intention for what we maybe think we're trying to do, or what we think the meaning of the passage is, or something. And it highlighted something for me, because because you might think that emotional intention, that gummy feeling, as she's calling it, is the musical impulse. You might think that. But actually it's not. Actually, the musical impulse is the music. It's what's on the page. It's the composer's intention. Executing the composer's intention results in something that we from the point of view of our kind of like what's trying to come out of us, we might not even be able to see it. And then she gave a beautiful analogy of like, it's kind of like when you're having a conversation with someone and you're so passionate about what you want to say that you forget to listen to them. And that's exactly what it feels like to me. And it's weird to identify this, because it's almost like it's the kind of thing where I almost wouldn't. It's really hard to see this, but there's a way in which our own desire to make the thing happen, the music happen, gets in the way of making the music. And removing that, removing that intention, which is really the sort of frame that in the affirmative, putting our focus exclusively on the execution. It's like it bypasses that pitfall, because in that pitfall, it's like I think my expression, or I think my capacity to play the passage, my capacity to play the passage is limited by my intention, because I don't actually know what the passage is. I'm not listening to the passage. I'm not listening to Chopin. I'm listening to what Robin feels when he starts playing these notes, and I start to try and do more and more of what Robin feels when he's playing these notes, but that has nothing to do with playing Chopin. And there's a reason why the passage remains difficult. If I stay in my own intention, there's a reason why that passage remains difficult, because my intention is cluttering up the field of receptivity. I'm projecting my intention onto it rather than truly listening it. And so this idea of playing strictly technically, she was saying that it kind of dissolves, or it's like it bypasses that gummy feeling, because it doesn't. It's not that it just doesn't allow that to enter and affect what's happening. when we put our focus exclusively, especially on a passage like the one in question, it's so technically demanding and kind of intricate that there's no, it forces your hand, pun intended, it forces your hands to have to manage something that's really difficult to manage. So any impediment to that becomes very obvious very quickly. But it was just a beautiful thing to realize, oh, I need to step back off my intention, which is also in a way the very first thing I talked about with the lesson. I need to step back off my intention and allow myself to receive this more if I actually want to master it, if I actually want to be able to command this music. I have to let my own intention go. My own intention to master the music is getting in the way of me mastering the music. It's so paradoxical and kind of like seemingly contradictory that it's really hard to absorb emotionally. Emotionally, we feel like, no, but I want to do this. That's why I'm giving myself. And it's like, yeah. And you'll move with that intention and as the driver, but you won't go all the way. You won't go that far. That intention will limit you. That intention is blinders. That intention is the thing that you think is driving you, but it's actually the thing that's closing off your view of where this can go, where you can go. So just a big one to receive. Love you folks. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. I'll probably have 2 or 3 more of these in the next couple days because it was a big lesson. But I'll share them as they come to me. Much love. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.